So one of the things that is really interesting about your book, you don't see a lot, is you've got pictures. There are a number of illustrations and figures in it. So those viewers that don't like to read, you can look at the pictures in the book. Go buy it.
Pictures.
But one of the ones is, this is one of my favorite images from the ancient world, and it's the graffiti, the Alexamenos graffiti. What is going on there? I'll put it on the screen. It's this horse up on a cross, and somebody's saying something. What's happening here? What is this?
Yeah, so we think this is some kind of young person, maybe a teenager's scratchings appears to be on a wall, and it looks like kind of a bored kid's graffiti. Yeah. And it's in kind of stick figure form, and it has a cross. It's pretty early on, I think, 2nd century. Has a cross with a man with a donkey's head, and then it has another stick figure next to it, as if someone observing this crucified figure. And there's a little saying on that graffiti, and it says, Alexamenos worships or reveres his God. And Alexamenos appears to be the onlooker. And what scholars think is going on is this is someone making fun of a Christian worshiping Christ who was crucified. Rome had a lot of punishments for criminals, burned alive, beheading, hanging, all kinds of stuff. And many execution styles are meant to be easy. Beheading is very easy, and doesn't require a lot of time and effort. But crucifixion is very laborious. Right. You are putting these crosses together, you're nailing them to the cross, and there's kind of fanfare involved with it. And we often think of like 3 people on a cross because of the paintings of the two criminals and Jesus. But the realistic picture we get from the ancient world is actually a highway, a very long highway. If you think about Spartacus and the great Spartacus slave revolt, and thousands of people were crucified at once. And so ancient writers say there'll be this long highway where you're just traveling, and it's a public deterrent to see all these people carrying crosses. So crucifixion was, a lot of ancient writers talk about it not just as a painful punishment or capital punishment, but actually as the greatest form of shaming and humiliation in the ancient world, because you're hung naked or almost naked, and your family comes to basically watch you die. And it was commonly expected that animals, vultures would come and pick at the body. You see the person in great pain trying to stay alive, even though they're going to find it very difficult, and they'd break their legs and all of that. And so the idea was, once you're crucified, there's no coming back from that. Your family can't really come back from that. It's sort of like a scarlet letter on your family. And then to revere someone like that. And the way the New Testament portrays is really interesting, because whether it's the Gospels, or the book of Acts, or Paul's letters, Jesus basically accepts the path to crucifixion. He talks about taking up your cross. Whereas when I looked at the ancient records on crucifixion from various ancient writers, it's always X was crucified or X was crucified by Y, meaning nobody volunteers to be crucified. Yeah. Nobody signs up for that, and you avoid it at all costs. So this graffiti represents the common notion of the populace that you can't put the word God and cross in the same sentence, let alone the same person. And yet this is what the Christians did. They said, our hero story is Philippians chapter 2, where he had the highest level of glory and honor, but he humbled himself, lowered himself, took the form of a slave, meaning he was willing to live as and among the least of these, and even died a criminal's death, to the furthest extent of dying on the cross. Cicero referred to the cross as the tree of shame, or tree of humiliation. And that should be the end of the story. That should be the end of the hymn. Oh, well, but it goes on. Therefore, God super exalted him and gave him the name above every name. And that would make no sense. That's like saying 2 + 2 = -10. Like, that's It makes no
Yeah.
mathematical sense in the Roman economy.
Or in the
But
Jewish economy either. I mean, cursed is anyone who's hung on a tree. Like it's a perfect convergence of shame in both traditions, Roman world
Absolutely.
and the Hebrew world. And it's like that. And so the gospel itself is just, it's scandalous. It's foolishness. It just, like you said, doesn't compute. It doesn't make sense. And so you could see some little schoolboy writing graffiti of his hated classmate or his rival, like, oh yeah, this is a god you worship, drawing a little donkey head on it. And I mean, it would have been, it would have just, it would have been endless mockery. And we can't appreciate that today because it's crucifixes are everywhere. Crosses are fashion statements. There's no way we can fully put ourselves back in that mindset. I don't think.
Yeah. It's Christians identifying themselves with the lowliest in society, and to some degree the worst in society, because Jesus is hanging between two. And we translate that thieves. I don't know if you've ever looked in this world, but in this
late days, brigands.
Yeah, you don't crucify thieves. Like they didn't like steal a pack of gum from the 7-Eleven. Like they were another term for this is insurrectionists. Mm-hmm. Insurrectionists, or we might say terrorists. Right. Terrorists would be, they would be, native terrorists, but that would be a better, they were the worst of the worst criminals. And for Christians to say, I love when Hebrews says he despised the shame of the cross. Mm-hmm. You should be despising the cross, but Jesus despised the shame of the cross, saying he's willing to endure any public mockery in order to accomplish what God the Father wants to accomplish. Yeah. I mean, that takes a completely different constitution.
Yeah, it turns us on its head. That's a great phrase, despising the shame. It's one of those many instances where the gospel, flips things upside down. And again, for familiarity, we don't even think anything about it because we've probably heard that sermon or heard that verse read so many times. But just how ironic and jarring that statement that would have been. And I think I heard somewhere, I don't know which scholar, I remember reading this from, maybe N.T. Wright but they said that crucifixion was, it was one of those things you didn't speak of it in polite society. Like it was, you don't bring that up at the dinner party when ladies are present or when, high society, like we don't talk about that. Like just the heaps and heaps and heaps of shame that, again, we can't picture today because it's become ubiquitous.
Yeah, we found ancient evidence that they would say, go get yourself crucified, the way we would say, the F word.
Yeah.
And so obviously, it's not something that it's crass. It's crass to even use the word. And I've been studying Greek for 25 years, and so when you read a language enough, you start to get certain emotional vibes. Mm-hmm. And I get kind of the hair standing on the back of my neck when I read the Greek word stauros, right, or staurao, which means to the cross or crucify. I experience that kind of ickiness of just seeing the word. And what's interesting, I wish I could show you the evidence. I should have put this in the book, but some of the earliest manuscripts of Greek of the New Testament will use certain kinds of abbreviations because they're sacred. They want to abbreviate the word, right, to not write out the full word. And they use that for God. They use that for Christ. They sometimes use it for Son of God. They use that sometimes for cross. They would actually use a special stylization for that word in some of these early manuscripts just to kind of highlight the word. Yeah. And they basically took something that was a mark of shame and they turned it around into a mark of honor. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the ultimate act of how people say we're taking it back, like we're taking back this derogatory label, like the Christians.
Exactly.
That's the most successful take it back campaign in human history for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.